I used to think I had it all, married to the perfect man, a stable home, and a son I raised with all the love in the world. David Miller was charming, successful, and knew exactly how to make me feel like the luckiest woman alive. He talked sweet, played the part of the loyal husband, and made me believe we were in this life together. I even transferred all the shares of my family's company into his name because I thought love meant trust. But everything I believed shattered into pieces when he asked, on his deathbed, to be buried with my adopted sister Sophie. My blood turned cold. I said no. Of course I said no. But what gutted me wasn't David's audacity, it was my son. He stood there, my own child, and said, "Aunt Sophie is my real mom." They were in love for years. They only stayed apart to protect her feelings. Now that it's over, why can't they finally be together? That was the moment my entire world collapsed. I slapped him across the face, not out of rage, but out of disbelief. And then he hit me with the final blow. Your real son died the day he was born. I couldn't breathe. My ears rang, my heart pounded, and before I could scream, everything went black. But when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in a hospital room mourning betrayal. I was in labor. Again. Sweat drenched my back, pain seared through my body, and nurses shouted all around me, "Push, push harder." Almost there. My head was spinning. My soul had literally been dragged back to the moment everything had gone wrong. Seconds later, I heard the cry of a newborn. Then someone said, "It's a boy." I saw a baby's tiny leg, and there it was, a small red mole on his inner thigh. And just like that, I passed out from the pain. When I woke up again, David was there, holding a baby. His smile was fresh, younger, less polished. He hadn't grown into the manipulative snake he'd become yet. "Emily, look at our son. He's strong, right?" He handed me the baby, beaming. My fingers trembled. I stared at the little face I knew too well, the same face I had cherished for 18 years in my past life. This wasn't my child. This was Sophie's bastard son. The child she made with David behind my back. I held him close anyway, hiding the rage that burned beneath my skin. "Is Sophie okay? Did she give birth?" I asked softly. David flinched, barely concealing his reaction. Yeah, she's fine. She had a boy too." I gave him a sad smile. "She's unmarried, and just had a baby. It must be hard for her. Why don't you go check on her for me?" And just like that, he left, obviously thrilled I was being so understanding. God, he was so easy to read when he was still young and stupid. The moment he was gone, I rang the nurse call button and spun my plan into motion. I told the nurse Sophie was my sister. She had just delivered, and I wanted her to get a free checkup, but I couldn't let her know I paid for it because of her pride. The nurse bought it completely. Minutes later, David and Sophie were lured away. I grabbed the baby in my room and rushed to the ward next door. There he was, my real son, sleeping quietly in a crib. My heart almost gave out. I swapped them immediately. Thankfully, we were in a top-tier private hospital. Everything, the blankets, clothes, tags, looked exactly the same. I brought my child back and stared at his peaceful little face. Then I opened his diaper, and there it was. That red mole again. This time it was on the right baby. My baby. Tears blurred my vision. In my past life, I never got to see this face. They'd taken him from me the moment he was born, replaced him, and murdered him in cold blood. I remembered now how David had been sent to manage a new office in another city under the excuse of training, and Sophie followed not long after under some fake work assignment. They used my family's money, lived comfortably, and raised that child as theirs. Meanwhile, I was left behind, working my ass off, giving them everything, raising a child that wasn't even mine. All because I was blind. All because I trusted the wrong people. I forced myself to calm down. I still had time. I could fix this. I wouldn't let them win again. "So," David said casually when he returned later, "have you thought of a name?" "I really like the name Aiden Miller. Sounds strong, right?" Aiden. That was the name they used before. Aiden. Short for Aiden Grant, because they gave him my last name to make it all seem normal. But even his name was a tribute to Sophie. I smiled. "Let's just give him a nickname for now, how about an N?" As for his real name, I'd rather my parents name him. They're more experienced. David's face stiffened. But we already agreed to name him ourselves. I shrugged. The name will last his whole life. No harm getting a second opinion, right? He didn't argue. Not when I invoked my parents. In my past life, he had secretly rushed the birth certificate and given the baby his last name before my parents could even return from a business trip. I wouldn't give him the chance again. Sophie seemed annoyed too. She tried to hide it, but her tone gave her away. Wow, Grandma and Grandpa naming the baby themselves? I guess we'll really have to love him extra then. I smiled sweetly. Of course. He's a grandchild. My parents will naturally love him more. Oh, and Sophie? Take care of yourself and your baby too. It's hard being a single mom, especially after losing someone. Sophie's expression cracked. I could see the bitterness behind her fake smile. Yeah, I guess my son just wasn't lucky. He died right after I gave birth. My stomach clenched. I almost lost my son because of them. I had to force myself to keep calm, but my nails were digging into my palm. Really? How awful. What happened? I asked. No idea. Just stopped breathing. Guess he was too weak, she said with zero emotion. I wanted to scream. That was your child, you monster. But I bit my tongue. I needed them to keep believing I was clueless. I needed time to gather everything and make them pay for what they'd done. In my past life, I buried a child I never got to hold. But in this life, I held him close, whispered his name, and vowed this time I would protect him with everything I had. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cold expression on my so-called son's face from my past life, the one who'd called me selfish for not letting his real parents David and Sophie buried together. The one I raised, fed, protected, loved with everything I had, only to be told at the end that he was never mine. I remembered the way he looked at me with disgust, like I was the one who destroyed their true love. It made me nauseous just thinking about it. And now, here I was, lying in a hospital bed, cradling my real baby in my arms while that ungrateful little bastard Sophie's son was dead. Dead because of them, but also dead because I swapped him back. In the last life, I mourned a child that wasn't even mine. This time, I wasn't letting history repeat itself. I needed to be smarter, colder, and 10 steps ahead. I needed proof off everything. So the next morning, I quietly asked one of the nurses I had tipped off earlier to check the morgue for me. I needed confirmation. Was Sophie's baby really dead? The nurse was hesitant, but I slipped her some cash and a kind smile. She came back not long after, her voice low. There is a newborn boy. He was left alone in the ward while the mother went for a checkup. The baby suffocated under the blanket. It was tragic. I clenched my fists. Tragic? That was their plan from the beginning. They wanted my baby gone. I was just lucky to have acted fast enough to switch him back. If I hadn't, it would have been my child in that morgue, not hers. And yet, neither of them showed any sign of remorse. In fact, that same day, I walked down the hall to stretch my legs and made the mistake of turning the corner near the family lounge only to see Sophie sitting on David's lap, arms around his neck, kissing him like she didn't just lose her child 24 hours ago. Babe, she whispered breathily. You don't feel bad about the baby, do you? David grinned, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. Why would I? I'm not raising some stranger's kid. Only the child you gave me counts. Emily's not worthy of having my child. My blood ran ice cold. Sophie giggled, completely unbothered. I'm just glad she'll be the one to raise our baby with all the Grant family's money. We won't even have to lift a finger. David chuckled. Give it a few days. I'll head back to Eastwood, get you transferred over too. We can live together openly, there ain't no more sneaking around. I didn't even know how I made it back to my ward without vomiting. The audacity. The shamelessness. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. They were already planning a future together, built on my family's wealth, my company, my child. It was sick. But I couldn't confront them yet. I had to stay calm, calculated. So I made my next move. I borrowed a phone from a nurse's desk and called my parents. They were still out of town on business, but I knew they'd rush back the moment they heard my voice. I needed them now more than ever. In my last life, they trusted David because of me. I vouched for him. He came from nothing, both his parents gone early, and my dad thought he was a hard-working, grounded guy. He gave David a job in our company, tested his loyalty, and then offered him to me as a potential husband. I didn't have a boyfriend back then, and I figured why not? My dad approved, and David seemed decent enough. But I didn't know I was welcoming a wolf into my home. The worst part? My sister Sophie was never even supposed to be part of the picture. She was taken in after her parents died in a car accident. I was the one who begged my parents to adopt her. I thought I was being kind. What a joke. She played the innocent orphan for years, smiling, calling me sister, clinging to me like she was grateful. But the whole time, she was sneaking around with my husband, planning to erase me from my own life. I wasn't letting that happen again. Not in this timeline. The moment I got home from the hospital, I went straight to my office drawer and pulled out the marriage certificate David and I had signed. Something about it had always felt off. I had filled out my information and rushed off to an event that day, leaving him to handle the rest. Now I realized what a mistake that was. I had it investigated immediately. And just as I suspected, my certificate was fake. The real one was between David and Sophie. Apparently, the moment I left that day, she walked in, filled out her info, and signed it with him like they were the legitimate couple. The staff at the Civil Affairs office thought it was some kind of joke. Turns out, I'd been laughed at behind my back for 3 years straight. But I wasn't crying about it anymore. In fact, I was thrilled. A fake marriage meant no divorce needed. I could walk away without giving him a damn thing. For the next few weeks, Sophie and I were in confinement together. She stayed in her room, acting like a spoiled queen, while David waited on her hand and foot. Even the nanny started gossiping. "Why does the son-in-law keep going into the second daughter's room every night?" she muttered one morning. "People might think she's the real wife." I just smiled, sipped my soup, and said, "She doesn't have a husband. It's nice David's looking after her. It's the least he can do." The nanny looked at me sideways. I knew what she was thinking, but I didn't care. Let them think I was blind. Let them think I was weak. The more they underestimated me, the better. A few days later, David stormed into my room with a grim look. "Emily, why did I get an email from the company saying I'm suspended?" I kept feeding the baby, completely calm. "I don't know. Maybe they're just giving you paternity leave. I mean, I've got a nanny. It's not like I need you here." His face twitched. I knew exactly what he was worried about. If I really was mad about Sophie, I could get my father to fire him in a heartbeat. So now he had to play nice. "I'm only helping her out for your sake," he explained. "But sure, I'll take care of the baby from now on. You should rest." I nodded. "Sounds good. He's almost a month old. I'll need to start preparing for the full-month banquet soon. We'll invite everyone. It's gonna be big." David grinned like he won the lottery. Of course, of course. Leave everything to me." Good. That's exactly what I wanted. Let him throw the biggest party in town. Let everyone come and celebrate. Because at that banquet, I was going to end the circus for good. The banquet was everything David had dreamed of: big, glamorous, full of business elites and family friends clinking glasses and singing his praises like he was some self-made man instead of a lying thief living off my family's name. But I smiled through it all. Picture perfect in a custom dress, hair curled like I didn't know the truth that every toast, every handshake, every cheer was built on lies, betrayal, and blood. Because this wasn't just a party for our child, it was the stage I built to. Bury David Miller and Sophie alive in front of everyone who ever mattered, and they had no clue the spotlight was about to turn blinding. He greeted guests at the door with Sophie clinging to his arm, looking every bit like the lady of the house while I stayed calm in the center of a storm, holding Aiden and watching her pretend to play hostess with that smug look on her face like she thought she'd already won. People whispered, "They make such a beautiful couple," and I wanted to laugh because she wasn't even hiding it anymore. The way she laughed too loud, touched his sleeve too much, like she was trying to erase me in real time, but that was fine. Let her have her moment, because it was going to be her last. The banquet reached its peak, champagne glasses raised, applause echoing as David took the mic, smiled like a politician and said, "Emily, thank you for bringing our child into this world. I promise to build a better future for you both." His eyes sparkled with fake sincerity, and I just nodded like the loving wife he thought I still was. Then Sophie chimed in right on cue. "Don't worry, sis. I'll make sure David keeps his promise. flashing that saccharine smile that made my stomach turn. Guests laughed politely. A few old ladies murmured about how unusually close we were, but nobody suspected a thing not yet. After the speech, the relatives gathered around to admire the baby. "He's got your eyes," someone said to me. "Looks just like you when you were little." My mom lit up with pride, agreeing instantly, while Sophie's face tightened. She stepped forward and blurted out, "I think he looks more like David. Same nose, same lips." The room went quiet for a beat before the mood recovered, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. She was losing control. And then fate handed me the perfect cue. Aiden started fussing in someone's arms. When Sophie picked him up, she frowned. "He's wet," she muttered, signaling the nanny to bring a fresh diaper. As she laid him down and pulled back the diaper, everything stopped. "What the hell is this?" she shrieked. "Why does he have a red mole on his thigh?" The room froze. People leaned in. David rushed over to look. I calmly walked forward, took Aiden into my arms, and cradled him while he cried from the commotion. The nanny, bless her, stepped up and said, "He had that red mole since he came home from the hospital. I saw it the day he arrived." Sophie snapped, wild-eyed. You switched the babies. Where is my son?" My father stepped between us immediately, shielding me. "Your son? Didn't you say he died?" The guests were already whispering, the energy in the room shifting fast. Sophie's voice cracked. "It was you. You took him. You killed my baby." I kept my tone ice cold. "What are you talking about? This is my son, Aiden Grant. That red mole was on him the moment he was born. I saw it myself. Your child tragically passed away. I was kind enough to pay for a proper burial. I even had someone take a posthumous photo out of sympathy." Sophie screamed like she'd lost her mind. "Impossible. The one who died should have been yours." Murmurs rippled around the room. Didn't Sophie's baby die after birth? She wouldn't confuse Emily's child with hers, would she? David's face drained of color, and for once, he didn't jump in to defend her. That silence said everything. Sophie turned on him, eyes blazing. "You told me it was her child who died. You promised. You swapped them. You said." David lunged forward to cover her mouth. "She's just grieving everyone. Ignore her. She's not well," but it was too late. The words were already out. The guests were shocked, whispering things like, "Was it all a setup? Did they try to replace Emily's child with Sophie's?" My father slammed the table so hard the whole banquet hall shook. "David Miller, what the hell is going on?" David was cornered, caught between a furious father-in-law, a spiraling mistress, and a growing sea of judgmental eyes. He looked like a man on the verge of collapse. "It wasn't me. I swear it was Emily. She switched the babies," he stammered. I let out a sharp laugh. "Really? What reason would I have to switch your mistress's child into my room and risk raising him as my own? So I could experience single motherhood while you ran off with Sophie." He stuttered, trying to piece together a new lie, but it was over. Then Sophie, in a fit of bitter desperation, screamed, "It doesn't matter. My son is dead, and hers is alive. That proves she took mine." I turned to her slowly. "Then tell me, Sophie, if you left your child perfectly healthy, and I only switched the babies after you both left, how did your son die while under your care? Why was he found alone, suffocated by a blanket? Are you really that careless, or were you just too eager to erase mine?" She paled. David looked like he wanted to disappear. I stepped closer and looked at them both, my voice low but lethal. "You thought you were clever. You planned to kill my son and make me raise yours. But I outplayed you. And now, all that's left is for the world to see exactly what kind of monsters you are." David raised his hand like he wanted to slap me, but stopped when he realized the entire room was watching. I met his stare without blinking. "What now, husband? Gonna hit your wife with that fake marriage certificate of yours?" He froze. I reached into my purse, pulled out the paper, and flung it in his face. "You're not even legally married to me, David. That certificate you gave me? A forgery. The real one's with Sophie." Gasps erupted. People surged forward to look at the document, inspecting the ink, the seal, the signatures. "Looks legit," someone whispered. "But it's fake. These two really thought they could scam the Grant family and get away with it?" David's expression crumbled. Sophie backed away, like she was seeing a ghost. I stared at them both and said it loud enough for every guest to hear. You wanted to take everything from Mimi Company, my child, my name, but you forgot one thing. I'm a Grant. And I always finish what I start. The room was a circus of whispers and stares, gasps echoing like gunshots every time someone passed around the fake marriage certificate, their eyes darting between me and David like they couldn't decide whether to pity him or spit in his face. And there he stood, frozen with that ugly panic smearing his once polished expression as reality finally had lost control, and the mask he'd been wearing for years was crumbling in real time. Sophie backed into the wall like she could melt into it, face pale, hands trembling, but I wasn't done. Not even close. I held my ground, voice steady, tone calm, letting each word land like a slap. David, if you didn't want to marry me, you could have said so. You didn't need to sleep with my sister behind my back and forge a marriage just to scam your way into the Grant family's fortune. That one hit like a hammer. The guests exploded with murmurs. Someone even pulled out their phone to record, because of course they did. You cheat on your wife with her adopted sister, fake a marriage, murder a baby, and try to hijack a company? Yeah, people were gonna want receipts. David's mouth flapped open, no sound coming out. So Sophie did what she always did. She panicked, then got nasty. You knew, Emily. You knew everything. Don't pretend to be some innocent victim now. I turned slowly to face her, my voice low but brutal. You're right, I know more than you think. I know David visited you every night during our confinement. I know you pretended to be weak and sick so he could sneak into your room without anyone asking questions. I know you never cried for your dead son because you didn't see him as real, just a tool to trade for my child. And now that your plan failed, you're just another woman who tried to play the long game and lost. She lunged at me like a cornered animal, but David held her back, not out of chivalry but out of desperation to contain the damage. He was sweating, his eyes scanning the crowd like he could still find a way to salvage this, but it was over. My father stood from his chair, every inch the powerful CEO that built an empire from scratch, and when he spoke, the room went dead quiet. David Miller, from this moment forward, you are suspended from the company indefinitely. We do not employ thieves, liars, or men who murder children. The words landed like a guillotine. David flinched like he'd been slapped. Please, Mr. Grant, Dad, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Don't you dare call me that, my father snapped. You were never my son-in-law. You used my daughter. You betrayed my family, and you conspired with her, he pointed at Sophie without even glancing, to take everything we built. Get out. David looked at me then, and I could see it switch. That moment men like him go from charming manipulator to pathetic beggar. Emily, please talk to him. I'm Aiden's father. If I lose everything, what kind of future does our son have? I smiled, cold and elegant. As long as I'm alive, Aiden will never suffer a day in his life. He doesn't need you. He never did. I'm still your husband, he shouted, his voice cracking like his ego. I didn't flinch. I pulled out the fake marriage certificate again, held it up, then dropped it at his feet. No. You're not. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the background music had stopped, probably cut by a staff member who knew a scandal when they saw one. David bent down, grabbed the certificate, his hands shaking. This is real. It looks real. It's not, I said flatly. And I've got enough legal proof to bury you with it. You investigated me? Only after you tried to kill my child. He staggered back, stunned, while Sophie stepped forward, spitting venom. You think you're so perfect, Emily? You think just because you were born a Grant you're better than us? David was mine first. You stole him from me. The crowd gasped. I smiled. If that's true, why did you wait until after I transferred my company's shares to him to come claim him? She opened her mouth, then shut it. Exactly. I looked around the room, locking eyes with every relative, every business partner, every so-called friend. I was stupid in my last life. I let people tell me to be kind, to be patient, to forgive. And look where it got me. But not anymore. I'm done apologizing for being too soft. This time, I'm going to be sharp, ruthless, and absolutely unapologetic. The silence cracked when the sound of boots echoed into the room. Everyone turned as a group of officers in uniform stepped in, flashing badges and asking, Who are David Miller and Sophie Miller? Gasps erupted. David stepped back. Sophie went pale. You are under investigation for suspected involvement in the death of an infant. You are hereby summoned for questioning. Someone screamed. I didn't. I just stood still, holding Aiden in my arms like the calm eye of the storm while my enemies were finally swallowed whole by the consequences of their sins. David tried to fight it, shouting, "It's a misunderstanding. I didn't kill anyone." Sophie started sobbing, screaming, begging, blaming me. It was her. She switched the babies. I didn't know anything, but the officers didn't even blink. We have evidence, we have witness statements, and we have motive. You'll both be coming with us. David turned back one last time, locking eyes with me. Emily, tell them it wasn't me. Tell them I didn't mean to. I tilted my head, smiled sweetly, and said the words that ended it all. You lied to everyone, David. The only one left to lie to now is yourself. The silence that followed their arrest wasn't peaceful, it was a reset. The calm after a storm that had torn through my life and left only truth standing in the wreckage. And as I stood there with Aiden cradled against my chest, the warmth of his little body grounding me in the chaos, I realized this wasn't an ending. Not even closing, it was the prologue to the woman I was about to become. The guests were still buzzing, their faces a mix of disbelief and awe, some trying to quietly slip out like they hadn't just spent the last hour gossiping in real time. But I didn't stop them. I let them leave with full bellies and fuller mouths because I knew exactly what they'd do the moment they stepped outside. They'd talk, post, spread every detail like wildfire, and David and Sophie's faces would burn across every group chat, dinner table, and boardroom like a cautionary tale too juicy to forget. I could already picture the headlines. Phoenix man caught faking marriage, swapping babies, and killing an heir, and right below it, a photo of me in my champagne dress, standing proud with my son, and my legacy still intact. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break down the way they'd expected me to. I walked back into the ballroom, heels clicking like gunfire on marble, and faced the crowd with a calm that could only come from knowing I'd finally pulled the knife out of my back and turned it into a sword. My father stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder, eyes scanning the faces of the people who had praised David for years, people who now couldn't meet his stare. Emily, he said quietly, do you want to step down from the company while you recover? I looked him straight in the eye. No. I want to step up. He smiled, just a little, like he knew the girl he once protected was finally ready to become the woman who didn't need protection. And so I did. In the days that followed, I filed the paperwork to register Aiden officially under the Grant family name, securing his inheritance, his future, his place in the world that almost erased him before he could even walk. I hired a legal team to dismantle everything David had ever touched in my family's company, his shares, his contracts, his signatures, all invalid, all fraud. The evidence mounted like bricks in a wall I was building to trap them permanently. Digital trails of fake certificates, financial transfers to Sophie, text messages between them plotting the switch, like it was just another favor to be exchanged behind my back. And the final nail? Surveillance footage showing Sophie leaving her ward alone that day while her newborn lay forgotten under a blanket she never returned to fix. The prosecution had a field day. It wasn't just negligence. It was intent. And intent turned into charges. They both denied it, of course. Sophie cried in court like she thought tears still worked. David tried to blame me, claiming I orchestrated the whole thing for attention, but the jury didn't buy it. Neither did the public. Social media lit up with commentary. He used her, cheated, then tried to kill her kid? This is straight-up Netflix material. Emily Grant is a queen. Imagine staying that calm while planning all this revenge. And my personal favorite, that mole on the baby's leg? Iconic. They were right. I had become something else. Enterella, no longer the fool who believed in love without proof, or the wife who handed over everything in the name of loyalty. I was a mother now, a fighter, a survivor with receipts. When the sentencing finally came, I didn't even flinch. Both of them, David and Sophie, found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and identity falsification. The judge's words rang through the courtroom like divine judgment. Life sentences with no parole. I watched them get dragged away in handcuffs, Sophie screaming, David looking like the shell of the man who once whispered sweet nothings while plotting my destruction. And all I felt was clean. Empty, maybe, but clean. Afterward, I stood alone in my office, overlooking the skyline of the city I'd once wanted to escape and now planned to own. Aiden was asleep in the nursery across the hall. The sound machine buzzed softly behind the door, like a gentle promise that he'd never have to know the kind of pain I'd lived through to keep him safe. My mother came in with tea, placed it on my desk, and just said, "You're stronger than I ever imagined." I didn't respond right away. I stared at my reflection in the office glass, no longer Emily the wife, or Emily the daughter. Just Emily Grant, CEO, mother, survivor, and architect of her own redemption arc. "I didn't think I had it in me," I said honestly. My mother smiled, kissed the top of my head, and whispered, "We always do. We just need a reason." And I had mine. His name was Aiden. I wasn't just rebuilding for myself, I was rebuilding a legacy he'd be proud of. And if anyone ever came near him with so much as a whisper of threat, I'd burn the whole damn world to the ground before I let history repeat itself. Sometimes I still wake up at night thinking I'm back in that hospital bed, heart pounding, air thick with the screams of a child I never got a hold, haunted by the memory of a son who called me selfish with someone else's blood in his veins. But then I hear the soft breaths of Aiden sleeping beside me, and I remember him, not that woman anymore. Not the one who gave everything just to be erased. Not the one who mistook silence for peace. Not the one who wore a smile while they plotted behind her back, because this time I saw through it all. This time I let them think they won so I could drag them to the edge myself. And now that they're gone, I finally know what freedom tastes like. It's quiet. Not loud, not flashy. It's sitting in my living room with a baby in my lap and 1,000 unread messages on my phone, and not feeling obligated to answer a single one. The media still won't let it go. Me name trends every few weeks, when some gossip blog brings up the baby switch case again, or a true crime podcast dramatizes the trial. They call me the heiress widow, the phoenix mother, the woman who raised her enemy's child and still came out on top. And I laugh sometimes because I never wanted to be famous. I just wanted to be a wife and a mother. But fate decided to kill the wife and rebirth the woman, and honestly, I don't miss her. The company's doing better than ever. The board listens when I talk now, not because they have to, but because they know better, because I stopped asking for permission the day I took back my son and burned the lies down to ash. My parents moved into a house nearby so Aiden can grow up surrounded by people who actually love him, and when I look at him now, his tiny hands, the way his eyes light up when he sees me, don't think about the mole, or the switch, or the death that should have been his. I think about the future I built with my bare hands, the one no one will ever take from him again. Sometimes I wonder what David and Sophie think about in that prison cell. If they replay that banquet in their heads the way I used to replay the betrayal. If they finally realize how easily I could have fallen again if I hadn't trusted my gut. If they regret underestimating me just because I smiled more than I spoke. I'll never visit them. They're ghosts now. Their names don't belong in my house, and Aiden will never hear them unless he reads about them in a case file one day and asks questions I'll answer with nothing but the truth. Your father wasn't a good man. But I was strong enough to make sure you never had to pay for it. And if he asks about Sophie, I'll tell him she was just a girl who confused greed with love and thought she could buy a future with someone else's pain. I don't need revenge anymore. I've already won. The real victory isn't that they went to jail, it's that I survived. It's that I get to raise my son without flinching every time the door opens. It's that I learned how to spot the red flags and never ignore them again. It's that I turned a curse into a calling, a tragedy into a blueprint for power. And if one day someone tries to take what's mine again, they won't be met with the woman who smiled politely while dying inside. They'll meet Emily Grant, the woman who came back from the dead, carrying a child in one arm and fire in the other. The woman who was told she lost everything but still stood up and said, "Watch me build it back better." So go ahead, let them whisper. Let them retell the story in 100 versions. Let them judge or admire or rewrite my pain into plot twists. I don't care. Because this time, I'm the one holding the pen. And my ending? It's just getting started.